Thanksgiving at my parents' house always looked like something out of a catalog. Not just nice, curated. Table was set with cream-colored linen, polished silverware, and those ridiculous name cards my mother insisted on every year, like we were guests instead of family. Candles flickered in perfect symmetry. Turkey sat in the center, golden and untouched, waiting for its moment like everything else in that house. Including me. My name is Lila Monroe. I'm 29 and I own a small logistics company. Nothing flashy, just trucks, contracts, and long hours that don't leave room for applause. I built it from scratch after dropping out of college when things got tight at home. No one talks about that part. They talk about my brother, Ethan Monroe, MBA, corporate strategist. The kind of title people repeat slowly so it sounds more impressive. He walked in late, of course, still on a call, nodding like the world would collapse if he hung up too soon. Mom lit up the second she saw him. "There he is," she said, like the evening could finally begin. I was already there. Had been for an hour. I'd helped set the table. Fixed the loose cabinet hinge in the kitchen. Even brought dessert, homemade, because I knew store-bought would somehow be not thoughtful enough. No one mentioned it. Dinner started the way it always did, Ethan talking, everyone listening. His promotion. His bonus. His new apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows. My dad leaned in like every word mattered. My mom smiled so wide it looked rehearsed. I sat quietly, eating, nodding when expected. At one point, Dad finally looked at me. "So, Lila," he said, like he had to remind himself I was there. "Still doing your delivery thing?" "Delivery thing." "Yeah," I said calmly. "Still running my company." A small pause. Then Ethan chuckled. "Hey, as long as it pays the bills, right?" They laughed. Light, harmless, easy. Something in my chest tightened, but I didn't react. I was used to this part. The minimizing. The way my life was always reduced to something smaller so his could seem bigger. Dessert came. Mom stood up, glass in hand, tapping it lightly with a spoon. "I just want to say," she began, her voice warm and practiced, "how proud I am of this family, of everything we've built." She looked at Ethan first, of course. Our son, who continues to make us proud every single day. Then her eyes shifted to me, and her smile changed. Subtle. But I saw it. "And Lila," she said gently, "you've always needed a little more help finding your way." A pause. Soft enough to sound kind. Sharp enough to cut. "Sometimes," she added almost thoughtfully, "it feels like we've had to carry you a bit longer than expected." The room went quiet. No one corrected her. No one laughed it off. Ethan just leaned back, watching. And in that moment, sitting at that perfect table, surrounded by people who shared my name but not my place, I realized something. I wasn't just overlooked. I was the weight they talked about when I wasn't in the room. I set my fork down carefully. Didn't argue. Didn't defend myself. I just stood up. And walked out. I didn't slam the door when I left. That would have made it a scene. Something they could point to later and say, "See? This is what we mean." So I closed it quietly. Cold outside hit harder than I expected, sharp enough to sting my lungs. I stood there for a second on the front steps, listening. Waiting, maybe. For someone to come after me. For my mom to call my name. For my dad to say something, anything. Nothing came. Of course it didn't. I got in my truck, started the engine, and drove without turning on the radio. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was clear. Like everything that had been building for years had finally settled into something I could see straight. By the time I got home, I wasn't angry. I was done. The next morning, my phone was quiet. No missed calls. No texts asking if I got home safe. Just a single message from my mom sent hours later. "Hope you're not upset. You know how emotional holidays can get. Not I'm sorry. Not we were wrong. Just that. I stared at it for a long time before locking my phone and setting it face down on the counter. Then I got to work. Monday, I was up before sunrise, reviewing routes, checking inventory, handling a last-minute client issue that could have cost me a contract. Tuesday, I was on-site unloading shipments because one of my drivers called in sick. Wednesday, I closed a deal that I'd been chasing for 3 months. Real work. Real results. No applause. No speeches. Just progress. And somehow it felt better than anything that had ever happened in that dining room. By the end of the week, the silence broke. Dad called first. I let it ring. Then again. And again. Finally, a voicemail. Lila, call me back. We need to talk. Not how are you? Not are you okay? Just business. I didn't respond. An hour later, Ethan texted. You're overreacting. Mom didn't mean it like that. I almost laughed. There it was. The script. Predictable, clean, dismissive. I typed nothing back. That night, another message came. This time from Mom. Your father is stressed. The mortgage payment didn't go through. Did something happen on your end? I froze. Read it again. Then again. The mortgage. Right. For the past 2 years, I'd been covering half of it. Quietly. No discussions, no credit, no acknowledgement. It started when Dad's business slowed down and just for a few months turned into a permanent arrangement no one ever talked about. I never reminded them. They never thanked me. Just became expected. Until now. I walked over to my laptop, opened my banking app, and stared at the screen. The autopay had been scheduled like always. All it would take was one click. One small action and everything would go back to normal. The same system. The same dynamic. The same version of me. I hovered over the button for a second, then canceled it. Not out of anger. Not to make a point. But because for the first time I understood something clearly. If I kept fixing things for them, they would never see what was broken. My phone buzzed again. Dad. This time, I answered. Lila, he said immediately, relief flooding his voice. The mortgage didn't go through. Can you check what happened? Straight to it. No hesitation. I leaned back in my chair, calm. I stopped the payment, I said. Silence. Then. You what? I'm not paying it anymore. Another pause. Longer this time. Why? He asked, like the answer couldn't possibly exist. I exhaled slowly. You should ask Ethan, I said. That's not his responsibility, Dad snapped. Exactly, I replied. And then I hung up. No shaking hands. No second thoughts. Just a quiet, steady certainty settling in. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying them anymore. The calls didn't stop after that. If anything, they multiplied. By the next morning, I had 6 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and a string of messages that all said the same thing in different ways. Fix it. Not talk to us. Not what happened. Not even why. Just urgency. Pressure. Expectation. Like I'd hit a switch they didn't know existed. Mom tried a softer approach. Lila, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We can work this out together. Together. That word almost made me smile. I spent the day on the road, handling deliveries, checking routes, signing off on contracts. My phone buzzed in my pocket like background noise, disconnected from the life I was actually living. Because out here, on job sites, in warehouses, behind the wheel, I mattered. People counted on me. Paid me. Respected me. At home, I was just convenient. By afternoon, Ethan showed up. He didn't call first. Of course he didn't. He never had to. I saw his car pull into my driveway, clean, polished, out of place next to my work truck still dusted with the day's labor. I was outside, tightening a loose latch on the trailer. "Lila," he called, stepping out like he owned the ground he walked on. I didn't turn around immediately. Finished what I was doing. Then stood up slowly, wiping my hands on a rag. "Didn't expect you to visit," I said. He smirked slightly. "Figured someone had to step in. Of course. The fixer. Just not in the way he thought." "They're stressed," he continued, walking closer. "You cutting off the mortgage like that? It's a bit extreme." I looked at him properly then. "Do you know how much it is?" I asked. He hesitated. "That's not the point. Do you know how long I've been paying it?" Another pause. I assumed." "No," I cut in calm. "You didn't." His jaw tightened just slightly, that polished confidence slipping for half a second. "Look," he said, shifting tone, "whatever happened at Thanksgiving, Mom didn't mean it like that. You're taking it too personally." Too personally. I let that sit between us. "She called me something I've been proving wrong for years," I said quietly. "And no one corrected her." He shrugged. "It was just a comment. And this," I gestured toward the house in the distance, toward everything they expected me to keep holding up. "This was just what? My obligation?" "You're part of the family," he replied. I nodded slowly. "Exactly." For the first time, he didn't have a quick answer. Silence stretched. Not awkward, just revealing. "I'm not paying it anymore," I repeated. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "So you're just going to let them lose the house?" I met his eyes. They should have thought about that before deciding what I was worth. That landed. I saw it. Not understanding, he wasn't there yet. But discomfort. Cracks forming. He looked away first. "Don't expect this to end well," he muttered, stepping back toward his car. I almost smiled. "It already did," I said. He didn't respond. Just got in and drove off, tires crunching against the gravel. I stood there for a moment after he left. The air felt different. Quieter. Not empty, just lighter. 'Cause for the first time they were reacting to me. Not the version of me they were used to. The real one. That night, Mom sent another message. Longer this time. Carefully worded. "Maybe we didn't always show it, but we've always believed in you in our own way." I read it once. Then deleted it. 'Cause belief isn't something you say when things fall apart. Something you show before they do. And they never had. 2 days later, she asked to meet. "Just to talk," she said. I agreed. Not because I wanted to fix anything, but because I wanted to see how far they were willing to go. We met at a cafe my mom loved. Kind with soft lighting, expensive coffee, and just enough background noise to make uncomfortable conversations feel private. She was already there when I arrived, sitting straight-backed, hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched. She smiled the second she saw me. "Lila, honey." I nodded and sat down across from her. No hug. No small talk. "Let's skip to it," I said calmly. Her smile flickered for a second, then returned, slightly tighter. "I think we both know things got a little out of hand," she began, voice soft, measured. "But we're family. We can fix this." Fix. There it was again. "What exactly are we fixing?" I asked. She hesitated just for a moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Neatly organized. Tabs. Papers already marked. Prepared. She slid it across the table toward me. "I spoke to someone about the mortgage," she said. "There are options." I didn't touch it right away. I just looked at her. "What kind of options?" "With your credit and your income," she continued, "you could take over the loan." Refinance it under your name. Lower the payments, stabilize everything. There it was. Not an apology. A plan. I opened the folder slowly. My name was already printed on the application. Full legal name. Pre-filled sections. Even the employment details, accurate. They'd done their research. Or worse, they'd been watching. You already filled this out? I asked. We just wanted to make it easier for you, she said quickly. You're good with these things. Good with these things. Like I was a tool. A solution. A safety net they could activate when needed. And what happens after I sign this? I asked, keeping my voice even. Well, she said, leaning forward slightly, the house stays in the family. We all benefit. You'd technically own it, yes, but we'd still live there. Of course. It's our home. Our home. Not mine. Not even after everything. We could add you properly later, she added. Make it official. Cool, you know? Once things settle. Later. Eventually. Someday. I closed the folder carefully and slid it back toward her. No. She blinked. I'm not signing that, I said. I'm not refinancing anything. And I'm definitely not taking responsibility for a house that was never mine to begin with. Her expression shifted, confusion first, then something sharper. You're seriously going to let us lose it? She asked, disbelief creeping into her tone. I stood up slowly. You already lost something, I said quietly. She frowned. What does that even mean? I held her gaze. You just didn't notice when it walked out. For a second, she didn't speak. Didn't argue. Didn't even try to soften it. 'Cause for the first time, she didn't have control of the conversation. I turned and walked out. No raised voices. No scene. Just the quiet sound of the door closing behind me. That should have been the end of it. But 3 days later, I got a message that changed everything. Not from Mom. Not from Dad. From someone who had never played along. Aunt Rachel. Lila, we need to talk. There's something you were never told. I stared at the message longer than I expected. Because in my family, silence wasn't accidental. It was strategic. And whatever had been hidden was about to come to the surface. I didn't call Aunt Rachel right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because something in me already knew whatever she was about to say wasn't small. It wasn't casual. It wasn't something you dropped into a conversation and moved on from. It was the kind of truth that rearranged everything. I called her that evening. She picked up on the first ring. Lila, she said, her voice steady. I'm glad you called. Mom said you wanted to talk, I replied. A brief pause. I don't care what your mother said, she said plainly. I care about what you don't know. That got my attention. I leaned back against my kitchen counter, gripping the edge slightly. What don't I know? Another pause. Not hesitant, measured. Your grandfather's will, she said. My chest tightened just a little. What about it? You were told it didn't leave anything important, right? That's what Dad said, I answered slowly. Just paperwork. Nothing major. Silence. Then, that was a lie. The words didn't hit like a shock. They settled. Heavy. Confirming something I didn't even realize I'd been questioning. Lila, she continued, you were supposed to inherit the house. I didn't speak. Didn't react. Just stood there, completely still. The house your parents live in now, she added. Your grandfather changed his will 2 years before he passed. He made it very clear. My throat felt dry. What do you mean, clear? I mean he named you specifically, she said. Said you were the one who showed up. The one who fixed things. His exact words were, She deserves a place that finally gives something back. I closed my eyes for a second. Place that gives something back. I swallowed. Then why isn't it in my name? I asked your father the same thing, she said. He told me you signed it over willingly, that you didn't want the responsibility. I let out a quiet breath. I never signed anything. I figured, she replied. Which means one of two things happened. They buried it or they forged it. The room felt smaller. Not suffocating, just focused. Clear. Every late payment. Every silent expectation. Every moment I was treated like I owed them something. It all lined up. They didn't just overlook me. They took what was mine and let me pay for it, month after month, while calling me a burden. Do you have proof? I asked. Yes, she said without hesitation. Your grandfather gave me a copy of the original will. I'm sending it to you. I didn't say anything for a moment, 'cause there was nothing to say. Lila, she added softer now, he believed in you. He just didn't turn it into a performance like your parents did with your brother. A small, dry laugh escaped me. Yeah, I said quietly. That sounds like him. When the call ended, I stayed exactly where I was. Not angry. Not emotional. Just still. 'Cause for the first time, I wasn't the one who had been less. I was the one they had to hide the truth from. The envelope arrived 2 days later. Thick. Official. My name written across it. I made coffee. Turned off my phone. Sat at the table. And read every word. It was all there. Clear. Signed. Witnessed. The house was mine. It always had been. I folded the paper slowly, carefully. No shaking hands. No tears. Just one thought settling in. They didn't just take from me. They built their lives. On something that was never theirs. The next morning I called a lawyer. Not to fight. Not yet. Just to confirm. He reviewed everything, then looked at me. With this, he said, tapping the document, you have a very strong case. Could I take the house back? I asked. Yes. I nodded slowly. Then shook my head. No. He frowned slightly. Then what do you want to do? I leaned back in my chair. Thought about the dinner table. The word burden. The silence. The expectation. I want them to lose it, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. I didn't rush anything after that. People expect revenge to look loud. Emotional. Immediate. Mine wasn't. Mine was paperwork. And patience. The first thing I did was nothing. I let them sit in it. Let the silence do what it always does when money stops moving, turn into panic. Dad called again and again. Mom sent longer messages now, less polished, more desperate. We don't understand what changed. This is not like you. Please, Lila, we are family. Family. That word used like a lockpick every time they needed access to me. I didn't respond. Finn tried next. He didn't apologize. Course not. He never learned how. Instead, he wrote, "You're really going to let them lose the house over pride?" Pride. That's what it always became when I stopped being useful. Not their actions. Mine. Then came the notice. Official. Clean. Final. Foreclosure proceedings had started. I didn't interfere. I didn't warn them. I didn't soften the fall. 'Cause I finally understood something important. They never softened mine. I was at a job site when my lawyer called. The auction is scheduled, he said. If you still want to proceed, we're ready. I looked at the building in front of me. Half-finished project. People relying on me to make it work. Proceed, I said. 2 weeks later, it was done. I didn't go to the auction. I didn't need to. Ownership transferred quietly, legally, irreversibly. The same house I had walked into every Thanksgiving now belonged to me. When the eviction notice arrived, I didn't read it twice. I already knew what it said. What I didn't expect was the camera notification. Motion detected. Front driveway. I opened the feed. Mom was standing there first, holding the envelope like it might change meaning if she stared long enough. Dad behind her. Ethan wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. He never stayed for consequences. Mom looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Not weaker. Just exposed. For the first time, there was no table to sit at. No dinner to perform at. No audience to soften the truth. Just reality. A week later, I got a voicemail. Dad. His voice was different. Not angry. Not commanding. Tired. Lila, please. We didn't know. We thought everything was handled. Don't do this to your mother. I listened once. Then deleted it. Because they still didn't understand. This wasn't something I did to them. This was something I stopped doing for them. A few days later, Mom sent one final message. No guilt this time. Just confusion. We don't understand you. I stared at it for a long time. Then finally replied. Not with anger. Not with explanation. Just truth. You were never supposed to. I turned my phone off. That weekend, I went to the house. Not the way I used to. Not through the back door with groceries and tools and silent obligations. Through the front. With a key that finally meant something. The house was empty. Cawing. But not cold. 'Cause for the first time, didn't belong to them. Belonged to me. And I didn't feel like a guest anymore. I felt like the ending of a story they never thought I'd finish writing. Later that day, a retired couple moved in temporarily. People I'd helped before. People who needed stability, not ownership. Not control. Just shelter. I handed them the keys myself. And watched the house fill with something it had never had when my family lived there. Warmth. Real warmth. Not performance. Not expectation. Just life. As I walked back to my truck, my phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. I didn't answer. But I didn't need to. Because this time, there was nothing left to take from me. I had already taken everything back.